So thank you so much for joining me in my therapy, because I need a little bit of weekly therapy every week like we all do, and this is how I do it. I have a little bit of a thought that when you can't really wrap your mind around your trials, you can wrap your mind around this instead. And the this that I'm referring to is a little bit of Jesus Christ, and the reason that I say that is not because this is a terribly religious YouTube video, though I think when your life hits a trial, you do develop a little bit of spirituality. Like you just need it in your life, and you either go a little bit more spiritual or you turn away from that. So I don't think there's really any in between. And I've been thinking about that this week because, I mean, I'm not experiencing any, new horrific trials or anything that are going on in my life. However, I do have a little baby in diapers and bottles and a whole lot of attitude, and she is, I mean, this world is so hard for her sometimes. I mean, she screams constantly. In fact, my husband took all of our kids. I've got, my 4 sweet little babies, and he took them all today so that I could have a little bit of me time, a little bit of therapy time to kind of process this week and sort of paint it all out. So, I mean, if you've seen these videos before, I say it all the time, like I used to dance, and that helped me so much physically. And then after I got paralyzed when I accidentally jumped off a cliff and I became a quadriplegic, I discovered that painting kind of feels the same as dancing did. And so I'm just gonna paint it all out right now. We're gonna go dancing together, you and me. Hopefully you're not watching this video as like a tutorial for how to paint, because I can't prove it, but I'm a way better dancer than a painter. However, it does feel the same. I mean, it does feel the same. So my little baby, who, I mean, she can talk right now, and she's very verbal actually, very loud, very verbal, and she wants to call constantly. She's wants on my phone all the time. She wants to call specifically Jesus. She calls him Jesus. So at first I'm like, are you saying Cheez-Its? Are you saying Cheez-Its? You want to call Cheez-Its? No. She wants to call Jesus all the time on my phone, and I'm like, I can't really call Jesus. I'm like, well, I guess we could pray. And I'm like, well, I can't call him on my phone. And man, how easy would it be if we could just call Jesus on our phones, right? That would make life so much easier. Like if we could just call Jesus on our phones. But I mean, I'm not, like, praying is not terribly difficult either, and so anyway. But she wants to call Jesus all the time, and so I asked my other girls, I was like, so who should we call since I can't call Jesus on my phone? And they're like, call Spencer. And so Spencer is a friend of ours. Her name's, we call her Spencer. I'm just going to say that we call her Spencer. And it's not her name, but that's just what we call her. And so we called her, and that was not what my baby wanted. No, I want to call Jesus. And so anyway, we're trying to teach her how to pray, and not how to scream, and how to not hit, and how to just maybe call Jesus. And it makes me want to call Jesus all the time. I want to just go and hide and call Jesus myself and be like, listen, she's so hard. She's so hard. I love her so much, and she's so hard. And it made me think, like, when I was first paralyzed, in 2004, that's kind of what I wanted to do too, and I think all of us experience the same thing when our life hits a really hard trial. Yeah, let's give Jesus a call. Let's have him on speed dial. Who wouldn't have Jesus on speed dial? If we could call him on the phone, and just have his number programmed right there, and be like, boop, 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 give Jesus a call. But when I was paralyzed, in 2004, and I went to shock trauma, it's pretty hard. They did the surgeries on my arm. I broke both arms, both wrists actually. They think I landed on hands and knees because I broke both of my wrists and both of my legs, both of my femur bones. And so both of my femurs are actually rotted. They have these rods in them. And both of my wrists were broken, but only one of them needed surgery. So they did surgery on my left wrist and surgery on my legs at the same time. And during those surgeries, for whatever reason, my lungs collapsed. And so the reason I was in the hospital for so long, like months, like 4 months, was because I was on a ventilator, I had collapsed lungs, like it was pretty challenging to breathe and to relearn to breathe. Shock trauma is where I spent the first 2 weeks, and it was really hard. Like, people don't think to like tell you, they don't think to, I mean, they come in and they visit during the visiting hours, because shock trauma at the hospital that I was in had really strict visiting hours, and they didn't like say as much as I wanted them to say. And like, I couldn't ask any questions because I couldn't speak. And so they didn't like say anything. They didn't say things like, your dog's okay. Like, we put your dog, you know, in so-and-so's house, and we're feeding him and we're walking him and we're taking him on hikes. Like, don't worry about your dog, you know. And they didn't think to say like, hey, don't worry. We called the university and told them you're not going to be coming back to your classes this semester, you know. And they didn't think to say, like, don't worry about your car. We're making the payments. You're paying the insurance. Like they didn't say things like that, and I was really stressed out. I was really stressed out about everything, about my car, about my dog, about my life, that I didn't have any control over. And they thought I had brain damage because I'd fallen so far and you know, broken so many bones, and I don't have brain damage. But to stop me from pulling out the tubes that were, because I had the ventilation machine that was hooked up, you know, went into my mouth and down my throat and into my lungs. So I had the ventilation machine, but I also had the tubes in my nose that, you know, was feeding me, and I had tubes in my arms and everything. And then because I'd fallen so far and broken so many bones, I thought I had brain damage. But to stop me from pulling out the tubes, they tied my arms to the bed. So the only thing that I could have moved was immobile. And the surgeries that they did on my legs and on my wrist, that they did at the same time, and for whatever reason, those surgeries made my lungs collapse. And so, I just lost my train of thought because this lamb isn't turning, like, trying to figure out how a lamb goes. I don't know. Like I said, I'm a way better dancer than a painter. So anyway, but the surgeries they did at the same time, my lungs collapsed. I swelled up like a giant watermelon. I couldn't breathe by myself. I couldn't speak. I couldn't do anything. People would come in. They wouldn't say the things that I wanted them to say, and it was really stressful. Anyway, and I was very stressed. I was very stressed about life, very stressed about, you know, where I was. I didn't understand why all of this was happening. It just was a very stressful time. I remembered at this time when I was living in Florida, there was a bishop guy that I talked to who was trying to help me sort of navigate the young single adult years and stuff, and he was trying to help me like through all of that. And he told me to pick a song. He's like, pick a song, because he said the quickest way to the Savior is through a song. And so when I was a young single adult living in Orlando, Florida, working for Walt Disney World, that's what I did. I picked a song. What was it at the time? I think at the time it was I Love to See the Temple, but it doesn't matter. So like you could pretty much, it works with every song, you know, every Savior-seeking song, I guess. And so when I was in shock trauma, really scared, people weren't necessarily addressing the things that I wanted them to be addressing, I picked a song. And I didn't know at the time the extent of my injuries, and I didn't know at the time that a wheelchair was going to mean anything to me, or be such a huge part of the next going on 21 years of my life. But the song that I chose to sing at that time was Put Your Shoulder to the Wheel. And the music goes, the lyrics to that song, it's a Pioneer song, and the lyrics go, put your shoulder to the wheel, push along, do your duty with a heart full of song. We all have work, let no one shirk, put your shoulder to the wheel. That song gave me a lot of hope through the 4 months that I was in the hospital. I sang it to myself the whole 4 months that I was there. I couldn't speak for the majority of the time that I was there. I couldn't breathe by myself for the majority of the time that I was there. And it was very challenging, but I would sing that song like to myself, just to myself, and it really gave me a lot of hope at that time. And then when I came home from the hospital 4 months later, and I came to my church and I sat next to my little brother in the pews. Well, I didn't sit in the pews, I sat like in the chairs in the back, but I sat in my wheelchair, of course, because I came back to church in a wheelchair. And my little brother, I couldn't sing at the time because my lungs were so depleted. Like it was really hard for me to regain the strength that I once had with my lungs. To even be able to speak right now to you guys, it has taken quite a lot of time for me to get this far, like with my lungs. And anyway, and so at the very beginning I wasn't singing at all, but my little brother held the hymnal open, and my ward family, my church family, sang the opening song to me, not to me, but you know, as I was listening on. And the opening song that day in my church was the song that I never sang out loud. It was the song that I sang all the way through the hospital. It was the song that no one knew was the soundtrack to that whole experience of being paralyzed and in that hospital for that first little bit. And it was Put Your Shoulder to the Wheel. The world has need of willing men who wear the workers still. Come help the good work, move along, put your shoulder to the wheel. Put your shoulder to the wheel, push along, do your duty with a heart full of song. We all have work, let no one shirk. Put your shoulder to the wheel. This life is so hard, and I think all of us want to call Jesus. Like we do. When your life is a trial, you form a relationship, with the Savior, and whether it's a good one or a bad one is entirely up to you. But if it's a good one, then you're gonna want to call Jesus. And I think sometimes we do. We want to call Jesus. We want to make sense of this life, and we just do, like all of us do. And even if you pretend like you don't, and like you do, we want to. We want an explanation. We want to know what's happening. Sometimes I was talking to this one guy, and he was really upset with the trial that he'd had, or that he was currently having. And he's like, you know what? I want to see Jesus right now. And when I see him, I am going to punch him in the face. Like, we get this, we blame God. Like, we blame God, and we are angry. And I don't know if blaming is justified all the time, and maybe it is justified all the time, because, we know that God could change it. We know that God could make it better. We know that God could fix it and make it, go away. But he doesn't sometimes, and that's okay. I think we can still call him. Let him know what's going on. Let him know how we are. As we listen to good music, like music that brings the spirit, music that makes us feel good. I think good music makes everything better, like, to be honest. I don't necessarily think it has to be like churchy music. I think there's a lot of music you can even hear on the radio that if you're just thinking about, the God you believe in, that you will be able to hear him through those words. And I've had a lot of spiritual experiences with some country songs and Imagine Dragons song. There's been a lot of really good experiences that I've had with secular music as I think about the Savior and calling calling him up, just like my little baby wants to do. Let's call Cheez-It. Let's call Cheez-It. Yep, I want to call Cheez-It too. All the time. Want to give me an explanation for what's going on. Because when you can't wrap your mind around the trial that you're having, because it changes, like trials change. Trials, I mean, I have the exact same function that I had in the very beginning, but the very beginning was the hardest part, when it was like all new and I had to, you know, adjust and learn and reconfigure my entire existence to accommodate this new trial in my life of being in a wheelchair. I think that the very beginning of a trial is the hardest, but also a lot of people only experience like what could be described as the beginning of a trial, because they don't have the trial long enough for it to be, you know, old hat. They don't have the trial for like so long that that they've gotten used to it, you know, like the trial comes and goes in a matter of even years before, you know, it takes so long to be able to get used to your trial. And if you have your trial for like a multitude of years afterwards, like I have, you know, it becomes a whole lot easier. And so most people, when they're dealing with the trial, they're dealing with the very beginning stages of the trial. And when you really can't wrap your mind around the trial, especially because it keeps changing, and you just haven't figured it out yet, and you can't wrap your mind around this trial, you can wrap your mind around Jesus. You can wrap your mind around Jesus, and you can take comfort in the fact that even though you don't know what's going on, even though you don't know like how to handle this, you know someone who does. And if you don't believe in Jesus, I'm sure you believe in some higher power that you can trust, knows better than you what's going on. And anyway, I'm gonna keep on painting and keep on de-stressing this week. It hasn't been a crazy week, but it has been a week full of screams and children who want to call Jesus, who like, I'm still teaching them how to do that, you know. Let's do some Savior seeking songs, baby, because that's the only way I know how to call him, you know. Song of the righteous is a prayer unto me, and it shall be answered with a blessing upon their heads. All right, let's paint. It is a sheep, lamb in grass, probably buried up to its chest. Like I said, I am a better dancer than a painter, but it fills the void. It fills the void that dancing left. And I wanted to paint sunflowers because when I was thinking about what I was gonna say and like what I needed maybe to express and what has been going on this week, and I thought about music and the power of music and how that helps us wrap our mind around that higher power when we cannot wrap our mind around the trial that's going on around us. I thought of sunflowers and how they follow the sun, and so even though they're just sort of little bitty specks down here below the lamb, like I wanted that, and I painted the green grass because my one screaming baby who I love so much, who is wanting to call Jesus, or Cheez-It as she calls him, her favorite color is green. So I was like, oh, paint some green grass on this sheep that's buried up to his, I mean, this sheep is literally up to his armpits in mud and dirt. Anyway, I'm sure there's meaning there. I'm sure there's meaning behind this painting right here. speckled in pink. Anyway, it's very beautiful. Just remember, I'm a better dancer than a painter, and this is very therapeutic. So thank you for being here with me on my little therapy moment as I get to talk it out and talk about my week and talk about the things that I've learned, the things that I know, and the things that help me deal with the next big trial in my life, whatever that is, or even if it's not bigger than the things I've experienced in the past, it definitely helps. Just like David and Goliath, like he knew he could fight Goliath and kill him because if you read further back in that chapter, like he'd already killed a lion and he'd already killed a bear. So when he saw Goliath, he's like, I'm gonna kill you just like I killed that bear and that lion. So sometimes it helps, and it helps me to know like, hey, I have gotten through some really hard trials in the past and I can handle this too. So, thanks again. See you next week.